Hey, good Monday evening to you. How is everyone? It is good to see you, and it is good to be seen by you. I hope you are having an absolutely positively wonderful evening. I, of course, am the Dungeon Delver, and I'm darn happy to be here, and I hope you are too. I hope you're having a fabulous time right now, and well, welcome to the little thing we do. If you're a new subscriber, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Hello, Uncle Brett, Connect, Vincent, Lux, Damien, and all you fun folks out there in TV land. Now, if you are just stopping by for the first time and you haven't, say, watched what we do, this is just a little fun that we have. I do this 5 nights a week. I live stream about classic tabletop RPGs. Sometimes you'll get a little newsy video from me here as things develop. Like tomorrow, for example, I'm planning on dropping one, which I'm going to discuss a little bit tonight. Just a little bit of it tonight. If you are just cruising by and you haven't already, please do click the subscribe button, click the bell icon for notifications. And if you like the video, give it a thumbs up and leave a comment down below and tell me what you liked about it. And I'll do more of that. But anyway, regardless of where you're coming from, whether it's Facebook or Discord or just YouTube randomness, welcome, and I'm glad you're here. And this live stream, as are many others, is brought to you by our friends at Hellabard Games. Hellabard makes the kind of adventures that they would like to play, whether it's for 5th edition, for Castles and Crusades, or the OSR. Old School is in play at the table, and you can check them out at Drivethru RPG or on their website, hellabardgames.com. So with all that aside, I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. I had an okay one. I did a little bit of house cleaning. Now, this is relevant to the show. Facebook was rebranded today with the letter Y. That's funny. But I did a little show maintenance. You may see this in the end credits. But let me, for those of you who are show supporters, this isn't like some private secret thing. And so, if you're new to this, or you don't you don't support the show on Patreon or whatever, I'm not telling you to go away. Don't misunderstand me. This is just something that I wanted to kind of clue everyone in on. And it is this. I went through this weekend and I looked. I used to talk about how you could support the show on Subscribestar and on Patreon. My Subscribestar page is still there. At some point in the past, and I had mentioned this when it had happened, I think it may have been back in January. But because I only had 4 people subscribed on Subscribestar, it didn't auto-renew their subscriptions. I had to chase those folks down and say, hey, if you're going to do this, do it. You don't have to if you don't want to. But if you're going to do this, could you please, make the payment? And I felt really weird doing that. Like I don't like doing that. And so I let it be. And then I realized when I went back and looked again, it had deactivated everyone's accounts. Just as it had said, oh, they're not paying, so we're just deactivating their accounts for you, big guy. And so I realized at that point that it was not worth my time or trouble. So the Subscribestar is still there, but those folks are not those folks, meaning Subscribestar, are not really helping me at all. not the people on Subscribestar. The people on Subscribestar are wonderful, and I know all 4 of those people, at the very least in an internet way, and at the very most in a personal way. So I just said, well, you know what? I'm just not going to worry about it. And then I went through Patreon. This was particularly embarrassing because there were some folks who, and it's completely fine, I totally understand, had decided to cancel their patrons, and I still had them listed in the closing credits. So I went and I cleaned that up. So the closing credits supporters are our members. You can support us on YouTube membership. Oh, thank you very much, Uncle Brat. Thank you. Yeah, that's tomorrow. I believe that's tomorrow, but I will see that she gets that. Thank you very much. But at any rate, and guys, I am not complaining. If anything, this was embarrassing to me. And you should be, hey, Naughty Professor, thank you so much. Thank you for becoming a member, Naughty Professor. That's awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Let's all welcome Naughty Professor, who just became a show member, became a YouTube member, and that's awesome. So anyway, but what I did was I just went in and I cleaned all that up. I got rid, because there were folks who I'm entirely sure enjoyed the show's content, but just for whatever reason they decided not to support in that way, and I still had their names up, and so I'm sorry if that put you folks who did that in a weird position. I do apologize for that, but it's all cleaned up. But there's something I want to show you guys, something very cool. Hopefully this will this work? Check this out. Nope, it's not there. I think I got to go in here. I got to go in here. Is it brand? Oh, where's my overlay? I had an overlay. Nuts. Okay, well, oh no, is it background? There it is. All right, so let's show. Now let's try it. Check this out. It's still not showing. Why is it not showing? Backgrounds aren't visible in solo layout. Oh, okay. All right. That's why. That's why. So I have a new background. It looks really cool. You guys will see it on Wednesday when I have Kyle here. But yeah, I have a new background. I've cleaned up a few things. So there's some fun. So that's what I did this weekend. Something else I did, and I intended to start doing this tonight, actually, was I got everything set up to dual stream to Rumble. The problem is Rumble doesn't let you live stream until you have 5 subscribers on Rumble, which I don't have. Now, I'm going to get that organically. Please don't go over to Rumble and create an account just to make that happen. I'm going to upload the Gary Gygax interview to my Rumble channel, which is rumble.com/TheRealDungeonDelver. Because there's like 3 other Dungeon Delvers on Rumble. I don't understand, but the Real Dungeon Delver will be the channel, and I'll upload the Gary interview. And if people want to join us over on Rumble, once I get the appropriate number, I'll start dual streaming to both Rumble and YouTube, as I used to dual stream to Facebook, which until and unless Facebook ever responds and tells me the 1 second of copyrighted music, 2 hours and change into a particularly long live stream that got copyright struck, I'm not going to stream there again. So, no, that's fine. That's fine, Uncle Brett. That's absolutely okay. I don't like. I don't want people to leave the YouTube channel and go over to Rumble. If the Rumble channel grows organically and we get a good amount of people from there supporting over here, that's fine. That's fine. But please, even if you do prefer to watch me on Rumble, please stay subscribed to the YouTube channel. I beg of you. But anyhow, that's enough. That's enough of that silliness. Hello, Magnificent Devil. Zachary says, I started watching my AD&D how-to videos. Well, thank you. I hope it helps. I hope those videos help. They're not short. They're pretty in-depth. But if I can spread the goodness of first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons to you, regardless of where you are in the world, then by all means, please watch, enjoy, and enjoy. But anyhow, I'm going to put that up there because, well, tomorrow's your birthday, so I'll let that go. But speaking of AD&D, this was great. Last night, I played the third game of what was supposed to be literally a one-off game with some friends, and I gotta say, for people who had never played first edition AD&D before, the old grognard of the group. Let me back up. Of the three folks who played, one of them, she is in my Monday night first edition AD&D group. And she came to me and said, hey, I've got a couple of friends that I was wondering if you would run a one-off D&D game for. And I said, sure, I can definitely do that. And, or am I? No, I'm sorry. I've got my wires crossed. I'm thinking of something else. Let me start this story over and be 100% right. When the community stepped up and did that wonderful thing for my wife and I back in February, which is still unfolding, by the way. October is in weeks now. But that's when I get to go to University of Alabama football game at home. And I'm really excited about that. But when you guys stepped up, I realized when I got home from Lake Geneva, I have a bit of a karmic debt to pay forward. Not in a bad way, like I got away with embezzlement, so now, no. You guys did something awesome for me, and I wanted to do something awesome for some people. So I approached a couple of folks that I was casually familiar with and asked them if I could run a session or two of first edition AD&D, which is something I do through my company website, guidekey.com. But again, I felt like I should at the very least do something nice. So I pulled out all the stops and ran first edition AD&D. Now, I approached someone in my Monday night game to join us, who later asked me if someone else could join in, but that's for another story. So we ended up playing 3 sessions of first edition AD&D, and the vet from Monday night, mine is the only first edition AD&D she's played. If you guys have ever seen the 2 or 3 times when I've had Aurora on the live stream for anniversary shows, or just had her on as a guest or what have you, she has a specific view of AD&D. It's not her first game of choice, but she thinks I'm a great DM, so she enjoys playing with me. I'm gonna, you know what? That's a good question, Zachary, and I'm gonna answer that question for you in just a minute. But she didn't drive the game. She knew that the 2 people were playing had never played first edition AD&D before. Of that couple, one of them was the Grognard, and they had played 3.5 D&D, right? So that should give you an idea of where we're coming from. So to play first edition AD&D was, to say the least, a bit of an exotic experience for them. And Aurora did not steer the game like, oh, I think he's going to do this, I think he's going to do that. You know, you should watch to see if he does this. She thoroughly immersed herself in her halfling thief role, and they had a lot of fun. But what struck me, what gave me hope for the future, if you will, and this goes back to Zachary, you're learning how to play first edition AD&D. Let me tell you something. If you haven't found this in the player's handbook, Gary states pretty clearly, straight up says, avoid unnecessary encounters. If you don't have a reason to go poke the sleeping storm giant and annoy him, then don't creep around him. If you want his treasure and you can cast silence 15-foot radius and have the thief go up and start pulling the stuff into a bag of holding so everybody can leave, then do that. Avoid unnecessary encounters. And I gotta hand it to the 2 people who had never played first edition AD&D. They avoided unnecessary encounters. They ran from a stone golem. They entered an area that had a chimera in it. And they said, we're backing out of the room and slamming that door. I said, okay, let's roll initiative. They rolled initiative. It was a tie, but they were still near the door. The chimera had to move, so they were able to slam the door shut and spike it. They went into another chamber that had a vampire in it. Same thing. Slam the door, spike it shut. And at the end of it, I took a few bits and pieces from classic modules, because this was I wanted to kind of give them as much of a picture, kind of a, you know, do you ever get the Viewmaster disc and it's like a day at Disneyland or Disney World, and it's like 8 slides, right? You know, I wanted to kind of give them that same experience where they get a picture of all the different pieces that AD&D could be, and then hopefully they would want to come and stay more at a later time. And so the wizard that sent them on their quest gave them an amulet. You know, you tap the amulet, you're teleported back to me with the MacGuffin. And which I was disappointed to find is not another term for Egg McMuffin, but that's for another time. So they, you know, right at the end, the Guardian turned out to be an ogre mage I was getting ready to do the ogre mage thing, and I said, okay, roll for initiative. They're like, we're tapping the amulet, we're getting out of here, we're going. And I said, all right, let's roll for initiative. And they won for initiative, and they got the heck out of Dodge. At no point did they throw caution to the wind and say, you know what, let's just put our face in the fan. What's the worst that could happen? They avoided unnecessary encounters. And as much as I see and read terrible people doing stupid things in their games in various RPG horror stories, you know, it was nice to see one person who had never played D&D before and another person whose only D&D had been 3rd and a half edition years prior think not with their weapons but with their brains and stay mission-oriented, process thinking, and made it out safe. It was a lot of it was a lot of fun to DM those folks through that game, and I hope I get to again in the future. Now, to Zachary's question, what are the difference between AD&D 1 and AD&D 2? There are various mechanical differences, but what I'm going to focus on myself, just because I don't have any 2E books, it has been 20 years since I last played 2nd edition AD&D. It's tone. And that is specific. That is not just something, that is not just me being a grumpy old grognard saying, oh, the art's not in black and white, and the font's not, 6-point Futura, on construction paper, thick pages, and yada, yada. It is very much the tone of the games, and it's by design. The folks at TSR, the writers who worked on 2nd edition, had to take the dark fantasy tones of AD&D and expurgate them. And they did. Half-orcs gone because there's an implication that, half-orcs were made by orcs. I'll let you fill in the blanks. Assassin's Guild gone. You would never again see like the D series, the tone of the D series when Gary talks about how debauched and evil Airly Sinlu, the Drow city, is. You don't see that in 2nd edition AD&D modules. That there's there's an infamous set of writers' rules that TSR put out for authors, and I'm sorry, Dirt Stash is itchy there. But in that writer's guide, they said, there can't be any nudity in the art. And of course, a bare breast shows up here and again. And, it's very Frazetta-like fantasy art. It's, we had Diesel LaForce on the show a few weeks back, and he was talking about, there's nothing in AD&D art that I wouldn't want my kids to see. But there's no room for ambiguity, none whatsoever. The bad guys can never win. You can't talk about blood. The bad guys committing blood sacrifice or anything like that. It very much sanitized, ballardized Advanced Dungeons and Dragons to appeal to Kmart shoppers. Think about this. Now, I apologize in advance if this steps on the toes of someone, because I know there's a lot of people in my own audience who hold up basic and expert D&D as the ultimate expressions of the form. I heartily disagree with you on that point of view. I think Advanced Dungeons and Dragons first edition is the ultimate expression of the D&D forms, for reasons that we can argue about at some point down the line. But I don't really know anyone who got their AD&D books at Kmart. I know a lot of people whose basic D&D sets they bought at Kmart. And it goes to show that that larger retail market, not hobby specifics, is really what TSR was aiming at. And you put, this on a shelf in Kmart, and to paraphrase what someone once said, Miss Teen USA is about to suffer a pretty severe fate at the hands of this big red demon looking thing, and there's nothing that science or the military can do to stop it. And this is not the face that a Lorraine Williams TSR wanted to present to the public. A couple of heroes about to fireball a dragon out of existence. That's more their speed. And so the tone of AD&D was greatly changed. No more assassins, no more half-orcs, no more bad guys winning the day. Modules, novels, everything had to be written so that the good guys would always carry the win. The game was geared down away from anything could happen to this is your superhero simulation. And I know a lot of folks right now in the audience listening to this later might be muttering to yourself, well, that's not how we played 2E. The rules were better because they were cleaned up, but we played it just as gritty. I'm telling you what TSR wanted. I'm telling you what their desired outcome was. And it was not the party screwed up with enough wishes that they were able to crack open the needle rock and get Tharizdun out in WG4. Okay. It was not, we didn't react in time, and all of our souls got eaten by a Sararak. And the game just ended right there. It was not, most of the party was slaughtered. The evil high priest captured the rest, and they're awaiting sacrifice in the Temple of Evil Chaos and Keep on the Borderlands. It was absolutely not. And if you don't believe me, and this even started setting in first edition, grab a Dragonlance module with a hash browns recipe in the middle and sheet music. That is not the same as what I and my fellow grognards consider first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Greetings, LHRPG. Good to see you. I mean, and you saw it as the years went on. I mean, it's funny. I have this mostly hate, but a little bit of love attitude towards Wizards of the Coast when 3rd edition rolled in. Look, we have Osric and we have the OGL because Ryan Dancy and company wanted to make D&D inviolate. They never wanted the game to wind up where people couldn't create their own stuff. They didn't want what TSR was doing towards the end of TSR as a company. And that was brilliant. That was awesome. But 3rd edition D&D and 3.5 themselves were also pretty effed up, in my opinion, from a rules perspective and from a tone perspective. They kind of got back a few things. It was the return to the dungeon was their drive. The return to dungeon adventuring. But most people who they were 10 in 1990 when they first started playing D&D, and it was 2nd edition. They never dungeoned. So when they hit 20 in 2000 and 3rd edition rolled around, they just ignored that. But tonally, the game continued to soften. I mean, Thieves is no longer a thing. It's Rogue. And I see in 5th edition people talking about rogues. There is nothing in 5th edition that resembles classic Dungeons and Dragons at all. Nothing. You can make it do that. All right. You can put the structures back in to make it like classic D&D. But out of the box, the way they want it now, they don't. So, you have, some nebulous idea of a rogue. There's no thief anymore. So I hope that answers your question, Zach, that it essentially it's tone. It comes down to tone. And that's kind of how it is. There's a lot of nice artwork by Jeff Easley and by Larry Elmore. But, I think Gerald Brom did some work. Certainly Tony DiTerlizzi, Clyde Caldwell, and just some wonderful artists. But early AD&D, Player's Handbook, Monster Manual, Dungeon Master's Guide, that's where the black magic is. And that's something that was sorely lacking because the blue-haired church ladies, they could turn on the outrage machine. Now, when heavy metal really started hitting in the mid-late 80s, and MTV came along, they kind of got distracted a little bit. I don't hear too many Satanic Panic stories about D&D after the mid-late 80s. And Pat Pulling was still swinging for the fences, but people weren't paying much attention to her anymore. So that's kind of it. Joe the lawyer says, I hate rogues. I hate the whole concept of a stand by low armor fighter. Thank you, Joe. That I think accurately sums it up. Let's see. Jorge says, the thing I mentioned the other day was an adventure path for 1E to someone who is starting. Could I repeat it? Sure, absolutely. So what Jorge is talking about is running a campaign from first level characters to we're ready to retire in AD&D and running them over a cohesive series of adventures. Now, I will tell you, Jorge, you have work to do as a DM because the modules I'm about to mention are not all linked. But with that said, let's go. So, your starting module, in this case, I would recommend of Keep on the Borderlands, Against the Cults of the Reptile God, or Village of Hamlet. Start with Village of Hamlet because it is specifically set in Greyhawk and it has a Greyhawk-y feel to it. Against the Cult of the Reptile God kind of does, and Keep on the Borderland doesn't at all. But the Village of Hamlet starts you off investigating a rise of troubles, if you will, near the location of the Temple of Elemental Evil. Now, you might be tempted to say at this point, then I'll run Temple of Elemental Evil. It's T1 to 4. It's all of the modules. The problem is the power curve from T1 to T2 is really hockey sticked. It just like that. What I recommend is, rather than that, because by the time you get to the bottom of T1 to 4, surviving characters may be 7th or 8th level, which is not a bad thing, but bear with me. If you've got a good sized party, start with T1. I'm gonna come. You know what? That's a good question, Gangrel, and I'm gonna star that, and I'm gonna come back to it. So I'm gonna put this up here, and then I'm gonna come back to your question, Gangrel. So start with Temple of or the Village of Hamlet. Now, logically, again, you might think, well, we'll go into Temple of Elemental Evil. I don't recommend you do that. Bridge the adventure and take the adventurers through the A series, the Airy series. A1, Slave Pits of the Undercity. A2, Secret of the Slaver's Stockade. A3, Assault on the Eyrie of the Slave Lords. And A4, in the Dungeons of the Slave Lords. The party will be between 6th and 8th level by the time they finish. Now, you can bring them back to Hamlet and run Temple of Elemental Evil the remaining 3 quarters if you want. And by the time they're done, they're going to be 8th, 9th, possibly even 10th level, depending on what they do. Hey, Gangrel, thank you so much. Thank you for the super, Gangrel. I really appreciate that. That is awesome. Your support for the show is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. Gangrel with a $44, or 44, Gangrel 44 with a $20. That would be an odd amount to super, $44. Make some poor bean counter at Google have to break out a pocket calculator to do the percentages. So now you finish Temple of Elemental Evil. You might consider sending the party on what I consider a dyad of amazing modules. Well, one amazing module and one okay module. And that is S4 and WG4. Lost Caverns of Sojkonth and the Forgotten Temple of Tharizdun. Now, your characters are at a level at this point, 7th through 9th, where even carrying off all the loot and slaying all the monsters, they're probably plateaued pretty hard. So, barring any near total party kills where just 1 or 2 characters make it out They're probably not going to level, but they're magnificent adventures steeped heavily in Greyhawk lore. But we start the second half, if you will, now. Now, send them to the Giants. Run G1, Steading of the Hill Giant Chief. Immediately thereafter, G2, Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl. And G3, Hull of the Fire Giant King. After those, D1, Descent into the Depths of the Earth, D2, Shrine of the Kutoa, and D3, Vault of the Drow. The ultimate module in this path, or it could be penultimate, which I'll address in a minute, would be Q1, Queen of the Demon Web Pits, which puts the characters at odds with Loth herself. Read D2 and D3, indeed read G1 through D3 from a dungeon master's perspective. Read them as a novel, though, and extricate logical plot threads, because there's stuff going on in G1 through D3 that does not necessarily implicate Loth or call for the party to enter her plane of the abyss and slay her. There are drow houses fighting against each other who are leaving a trail of breadcrumbs to Loth, because her death will upset one of the drow houses and allow another to ascend. And they can then worship other gods now that you've snuffed Loth out. So it's not written that the party must slay Loth to end things. She's a patsy, is what I'm saying. But assuming you've played through Q1, your options here are to allow the characters to retire, or as an exercise as a dungeon master to really stretch your legs and run S3 Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, which is a very deadly and difficult module set on a crashed spaceship in the world of Greyhawk, or to run the Tomb of Horrors, which, I really don't have to tell you about that. Imperial Ramblings, it's good to see you, my friend. So there's a couple of variations, Jorge. There's a couple of variations. You might want to skip S4, WG4, and instead put White Plume Mountain, say, between A4 and returning back to the Temple of Elemental Evil, because White Plume Mountain is a great module. Or C1 and C2, you might try and fit Ghost Tower of Inverness and the Hidden Shrine of Temokon. Although Temokon is best fit in the Immediate jungle, far to the south in the Ulman Islands. So taking a party from the Temple of Elemental Evil all the way down there just to run that module, just to bring them back, that's a bit of a stretch. But your essential, Jorge, your essential is going to be either B2 or T1 or N1, then into the Slavers, then one or two bridge modules, again, White Plume or Lost Caverns of Sojkonth, and then into the G series. I hope that helps you. I hope you find that to be helpful. Now, Gangrel asked a good question here. He says, what are my thoughts on Pat pulling and the shenanigans she was trying to pull? Okay. Let me address this as frankly, as kindly as I can. When Pat Polling's son unalived himself, what parent? Some of you out there might be parents. Some of you might not be, and it just doesn't enter in. But I can tell you, if it were me, I would stop at nothing to find out why. And the hardest part of a situation like that ever is self-reflection. Because that person can never come back to you and say, look, this is what happened. And in the quietest of moments, in your most private times after a loved one does that, you have to walk in the bathroom late at night and look in the mirror and say, where did I go wrong? And that degree of introspection, even if it's wrong, even if you did nothing wrong, it comes to us all. And the reaction to that is to push it away hard and angrily and say, no, it was something else. And you turn and you look for the easy answer. And when Pat Pulling went into her son's room and saw Dungeons and Dragons books and miniatures and so on and etc., a psychically wounded parent had a misguided eureka moment. I don't think Pat Pulling would have hated me. I certainly didn't hate her. I pitied her. I think there were people who came to her and who justified and validated the way she was feeling because they wanted a national limelight. They wanted to be talked about in People magazine and on the Phil Donahue show. But I think at least initially, Pat Pulling was just in pain. She was in tremendous pain over the loss of her son. Who wouldn't be? She was looking for answers. And in the mind of someone who was born in the late 1940s, you know, books that talk about wizardry and sacrifices and black magic and that sort of thing, she thought she'd found her answer. Now, she was wrong. And there were times when people sat down and explained the facts to her and showed her and said, Miss Pulling, Pat, you're wrong. This is just a game. And she resisted that and she fought that and she pushed it away as hard as she could and attracted more attention to herself and damaged the hobby. She set out to end Dungeons and Dragons as a hobby, as most moral crusaders do. You know, carry nation and temperance. In just a few years after Pat Pulling, you had Tipper Gore and the PMRC. The horror and science fiction comics in the 50s were just extirpated. Pinball machines destroyed by the tens of thousands because they were, you know, leading to kids hanging around in soda fountains. There's always been a moral crusader who's gone after stuff like this. That's my thoughts on the woman. The shenanigans she tried to pull were awful, and they had terrible repercussions for Dungeons and Dragons, which we talked about with 2E. They immediately tried to appeal to the blue-haired church ladies once Gary was gone, even before Gary left. So and the people who bought into it. Now let me tell you unequivocally, Do I have that? Is it laying around here? I slept wrong on my right shoulder and it's been killing me. It's not there. Maybe it's over here. Yes, here we go. You know, Jack Chick was always going to publish this fucking thing. Okay. Jack Chick would have people believe that, you know, the Roman Catholic Church is a weapon of the Antichrist, that the tribulation is just minutes away, just all sorts of wackiness comes out of Chick publications, right? He was never not going to write Dark Dungeons. But that is the breadth and depth, I think, of Pat Pulling's legacy. Now, you know, Pat Pulling passed away a few years ago. I didn't do a fist pump. I tried to too when I was a kid, Magnificent Devil, but when you're 6 or 7 years old, a lot of those things can be kind of scary. So my mom and dad told me not to do that. But I think she was wrong-headed, and I think if she had put all of her efforts into working with the suicide prevention hotline, oh, I said it. If she had put all of her efforts into legitimate attempts to get troubled youths psychological help, then I think she might have found more peace. I think she might have found more peace because the vast majority of people, this is just a theory of mine. I'm just going to throw this out there. Yeah, I heard about that, Mark. Oh my gosh, Paul Rubens today, 70 years young. Rest in peace, Paul. The reason I think you can find so many AD&D books on eBay, or at least you could around the 2000s, starting around like 1999 to 2000, you could find the books in used bookstores. You could find them in comic book stores, and eBay was huge. You know, you could find just so many of them, so many of the books on eBay, and they were common and they were cheap. They were so cheap. But I think the reason they were so cheap is because, sorry, my voice is going for some reason, but it is because a lot of people, normies, wanted to see what the pop culture hubbub was about, and they bought the books and maybe they played for a little bit. Maybe it was just for a semester or two in college. And then they moved on to something else. Something else got more popular, you know, ColecoVision. They're the big, really wide, short skateboards. You know, that got more popular. And the books got put on shelves and forgotten about until, oh my gosh, remember this? Yeah, oh, I wonder if this is worth anything. I'll sell it on eBay. Or, you know, I'll take it all to the Friends of the Library sale or whatever. I think by and large, normies didn't care about what Pat was doing or saying. But those same normies very much would have cared about efforts made to help troubled people not make that fatal decision to know that there's help out there, and trying to stop a financially uncertain company in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, from publishing their game was not a good thing. Now, as I understand it, and maybe we can ask Heidi the next time we talk to her, but as I understand it, Gary was of two minds on the one thing until remember, Bink Pulling was not the first D&D on a live. That was James Dallas Egbert that really started the ball rolling on that. But James Dallas Egbert, the James Dallas Egbert case, Pat Pulling's son, and the hatchet job that 60 Minutes did on TSR and Gary, which you can find that on YouTube. Gary said that D&D never sold as good until those things happened. Those all kicked up sales. But it broke his heart. This was a man who believed in God. This was a man who believed in Christ. I'm not saying Gary was, a church alderman who, attended twice on Sunday and was involved on Wednesday and that sort of thing. No, Gary, like all of us, had his ups and downs, but he was not some robe-wearing pagan Satanist. And it always cracks me up when uber edgelords talk about D&D being this, it's like, yeah, I play D&D and I, worship Odin and Satan, hail the dark power. I'm like, you fucking goobers. I laugh at them as much as I laugh at the fundies. You're the same side of you're a different side of the same 45 record. A different track on the same CD. A different track in the same Spotify playlist. But these, these people who bought in and drove the sales, that was great. But Gary was heartbroken that some people looked at D&D and said, I'm not going to let my kids play that. That's a gateway to hell. Look at that book with that big red demon about to do something awful to that woman. You'll just get sucked right in. And look at this, look at, come on. Let me see if I can get this, look at this. Look at them. They're devil worshipers. They're up there. They're worshiping that devil statue, And I think my personal opinion is that Gary probably was more unhappy that there were people that thought that than happy that there were people who were buying it because of the controversy. And, an orbital error. And Gangrel, I hope that answered your question. But Orbital Air says, I'm very much a Bible study and church person. D&D never bothered me. There's worse real stuff out there that needs a church. And you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, Orbital. I mean, how many people our own the dungeon minister? Well, I mean, he's his own. He's got his YouTube. Go subscribe to Dungeon Minister channel, by the way, if you guys haven't. Show Dungeon Minister some love. The Dungeon Minister, but so many stories I've heard from people who said, my first time playing D&D was with our pastor. And look, I'm embarrassed to admit this, but it's absolutely true. My parents were caught up in the moral panic also. a lot of years that other kids got to play D&D, I didn't, because my parents believed the hype, which is a tragedy. But they, you know, they had no problem with me reading sword and sorcery books, which is just pre D&D on a rail. I mean, they would proudly tell anyone who listened that I read The Lord of the Rings when I was 7 years old. Understood it. And if I didn't understand something, by gosh, I'd go get the big dictionary and I'd open it up and I'd read through it. You know? So that's kind of the way it went. Now, I don't know, every once in a rare while, I do still hear of people talking about current year. And for me, when you get this old, when you hit your 50s, you tend to think of any time in the last 20, 25 years as being recently. So when I say recently, there's a caveat. But, you know, there are occasionally, I've heard recently, but rarely, stories of people who say that still comes up, that there's still people who say, oh, it's that evil Dungeons and Dragons game. And didn't people used to play that game and then unalive themselves? Well, I'm never gonna, so it still unfortunately can come up. And I hope that answers everyone's questions. Mario, you're absolutely right. Role-playing games are a tool for exploration and simulating adventures safely around friends. I mean, yeah, exactly. You know, who's out there? Oh, that was one thing, is when they were investigating the passing of James Dallas Egbert, not bank pulling. A game of Chinese telephone got started that, so the word was, well, he used to go into the steam tunnels at the university and play Dungeons and Dragons. They used to LARP there. Okay, well, who did he play with? Well, we don't know. Well, let's find out. Turns out nobody he played with was aware of him going into the steam tunnels. So they went back to the first person. Well, where did you hear this? I just heard it mentioned. From who? Around. Yeah, J.D. Egbert never went into those steam tunnels. Nobody did. Because they're full of pipes. They're full of pipes, full of steam. Leaky steam valves. You brush up against one and hey, 2nd-degree burns. They didn't game in the steam tunnels. Now, it's interesting you bring that up, Magnificent Devil. Magnificent Devil says, no one had a problem with Palladium Fantasy Role-Player Tunnels and Trolls either. They had a problem with one of the pamphlets that Bad put out was titled Just a Game? With a question mark. And in it, they actually cite both Tunnels and Trolls and the Fantasy Trip and Rollmaster. They quote some of the more horrific crits in games that have extremely gory and tongue-in-cheek descriptive critical hit tables. Oh, thank you for the super. Thank you very much. LHRPG says, I learned Alien and Fear in the Foundation only because my son wanted to play them. Kids love RPGs. They absolutely love RPGs. I loved playing Dungeons and Dragons when I was a kid, before my parents got the fear. I loved playing D&D, and I still do. And Kabuki says, that Mazes and Monsters was significant in my friend's parents banning him from the game, that in the 60 Minutes piece. Yeah, Mazes and Monsters did a lot to hurt Dungeons and Dragons. And if I was an autograph hound, if I was the kind of guy who could be bothered to go to red carpet events, I would go. Every time I heard Tom Hanks was going to be somewhere, I would go and I would take a DVD copy of Mazes and Monsters with me and make him autograph it every time. It is an awful movie, awfully acted. And yes, the reporting by 60 Minutes, so Gary told me about this, that the 60 Minutes report essentially, I believe it was Ed Bradley. I'll have to go back and look. They spent a day. They literally spent 8 hours in Lake Geneva filming B-roll. And Gary went all over Lake Geneva walking with Ed Bradley in tow. That's where I used to play as a kid. Look at this view of the lake. Wonderful guy. Great time. 15 minutes of filming in Gary's office. 15 minutes. They used about 2 minutes of it. And of the questions that they asked Gary when they shot their B-roll, you know, they would ask Gary a question that he would answer yes to. So, Mr. Gygax, do you like strawberries on your cornflakes? Well, yes, of course. I thoroughly enjoy it. They would take that and bolt it to another question. Oh, Mr. Gygax, parents are in an uproar over D&D. How do you take that news? Well, yes, I thoroughly enjoy it. To make him sound bad. So when I say it was a hatchet job, it was absolutely a hatchet job. 8 hours, 15 minutes of interview, 2 minutes of used footage that was deceptively edited. I mean, today in this reality, if you tried that, CBS would get dragged on social. No, actually, CBS is protected. They wouldn't get dragged anywhere. But that's, again, that's one of those things that upset him. That's what something he was fighting against. When they said D&D books should have a warning label, Gary said that the chair he was sitting in could be used as a weapon. Should have a warning. That was great. Yes, Kabuki. That was awesome. Yeah, Arduin was just bad and badly written. I may do a deep dive of it on the show one day, just because it's so terrible. Arduin is so bad. Dave Hargrave was in such a rush to copy original D&D. So there's a typo in OD&D. I don't know. Let me see. Is this great? Like I can just turn and pick stuff up and look it up for you guys. I hope the typo is not fixed in my omnibus OD&D rule book. Come on, let go. I hope this is not fixed, but there is a percent in layer for monsters that, because the company that they sent this to have it printed, the first OD&D book printed, or rules printed. Okay, the typo's fixed there. But they said, hey, don't correct, don't do this, or this. And the printing company that they sent it to, had never seen a role-playing game before. They didn't know what they were dealing with, so they didn't correct even the typographical errors. So monsters in the OD&D rules were listed as % liar, not % in layer. Dave Hargrave took that and said, oh, you mean... Oh, thank you very much for the super, Uncle Brat. Uncle Brat says, this is why I despise computer RPGs. All the computer RPGs are merely inventory management. I have fun with CRPGs, but the RPG part is a misnomer because you're not really playing a role to anyone. That's, Gary and I talked about that some. I think it's in the interview, but he says, well, why is it a role playing game? Who are you playing a role to if you're playing by yourself? It's in Monsters and Treasures, Uncle Brat. Thank you, Crap Phone. Have a wonderful evening. Yeah, so Dave Hargrave assumed that % liar meant there's a chance that the monsters won't be telling you the truth. So all the Arduin books, even after TSR issued a correction, all the Arduin books monsters have % liar. It's just, Arduin's just ridiculous. Another great quote from Gary about D&D was, if you think Dungeons & Dragons is real, try spending the gold that you collect in the game. I actually don't have Arduin Grimoire. Let me see. Uncle Brat's kind of got my thinker thunking, and I want to look and see if it is actually in my actual TSR printed copy of, let's see, where is my Underground and Wilderness Adventures, Men and Magic. Whoops. Still managed to knock something off. Okay, Monsters and Treasure. Monsters and Treasure. Here we go. And again, this might be typo corrected, so I can't really... Yes, it's right here. So page 4, page 3 and 4 of Monsters and Treasure, the columns that we have down the page go monster type, number appearing, armor class, move in inches, hit dice, % in liar, and type or amount of treasure. Todd, let me tell you guys something. For those of you who are new to the channel, Todd is the kind of guy that if he did get the gold in a D&D game, just like he woke up the next morning, it's like, oh, well, you get 6,000 gold pieces from the giant. Let me tell you what, y'all. Like the next morning, he would have it cashed in, donate unspeakable amounts of it to charity, make sure that all of his rescue dogs were like took them to the vet and got anything they needed taken care of. Go out and buy a new Escalade, and then come home at like 9 o'clock that night after all that and go, shit, I'm broke. And I say that with love, Todd. I say that with all the love in the world. Actually, no. You'd buy a bunch of stuff for your wife too, but still, like at 9 o'clock that night, you'd be like, shit, I'm broke. Todd is a force majeure in this here community for those of you who are new to it, and he's a wonderful person. Uncle Brad says, I'm going to be a percentage liar as well as eater of eldritch calamari and eater of soul. Eldritch calamari, woohoo! It would be a great day. Todd walking into the McDonald's there in wherever Arkansas that he's at, wearing Crocs with the little pop-in gemstones, but they're actual like diamonds and sapphires and stuff. Buying shamrock shakes for everyone. I want shamrock shakes for everybody in this McDonald's. Sir, it's June. We're not serving them. Damn it! Slams a handful of 50s down on the counter. I know you got the stuff in the back. Go make them. Yes, magnificent devil. That sounded like Akeem from the first Coming to America. Yes, you magnificent devil. Oh gosh. I cleaned up around my office some yesterday. I had all these posters, rolled up posters stacked, and I put them back in the closet where they belong. He buys weight in tater tots. I don't know how Todd feels about tater tots, but if he likes them, I could see it. Bedazzled shorts with real gems. It's a juicy across it. I have no doubt at all you would. You'd have like little gold bead weights in that beard of yours too. Oh my goodness. That's such a horrible mental image too. Todd is pro tater tots. Let me tell you, one of the best non-SEA events that I ever went to. My wife used to be involved in the local society for creative anachronisms, and we would go to SEA events, which of course is camping. You know, it's camping for a weekend, and then they do Ren Fair crap. We got out there, and it was the springtime, and a storm rolled in. It was like April or something, but yeah, storm rolled in, and we were like, oh, poop. So we left as the heavy weather was starting. We got everything out of our tent, but we left the tent there because we knew with the rain coming, there was no, it was not going to be, we weren't going to have time. And so we packed up everything and we came back to our apartment, and rather than going to bed in the bedroom, I had my Laserdisc player and my TV and my stereo and everything. And our roommate, who was also in the SCA, was toughing it out at the campground. I don't know what she did, but we folded the couch out and snuggled up on the couch and watched Conan the Barbarian. But before then, when we got there, I called my dad, and I because I wanted him to know, because I told him, hey, we're going out to this campground thing, and then bad storm started. So I was 25. I felt like, hey, I should call my folks and let them know, that I'm not camped out in the middle of the woods in a night full of bad thunderstorms. So we got home and we were starving because we were expecting to have eaten in the feast hall, a bunch of chicken, bunch of roasted chicken, and overcooked roast beef, whatever. So we're like, man, we're hungry. You want to get a pizza? Well, it's late, and we don't want to make the pizza guy have to drive out here. So yes, tater tot. Well, they're not mashed so much as they are shredded, like barrel-shaped hash browns. You know what hash browns are, right, Jorge? But anyway, so. Now, I had a shitty job, and my wife had a pretty good job. We were boyfriend and girlfriend at the time. But in the freezer, we had eggs and flour, not in the freezer, but we had eggs and flour. And in the freezer, I had a bunch of cube steak that my dad had given us. And I was like, we could make country fried steak. And my wife had never had that. She's like, what's that? And I said, it's amazing. We have these tater tots. So when I was letting my dad know everything was okay, we thawed the cube steak as best we could, and then per my dad's instruction, we fried it up in a pan, and we had tater tots and cube steak, and watched Conan the Barbarian lying in the fold-out couch bed thing. And it was the best SCA event I never attended. And it was delicious. Yeah, we tend to call the ones that are like the side a little bit bigger than a quarter hash rounds more than tater tots. Tots are a specific thing. It was, Jorge. It was wonderful. It was a delightful evening that was better spent. And when we got back to the campground the next day, because we had to go and we had to take our tent down. When we got there was like a 2-inch deep puddle of water in the bottom of the tent. I don't mean like completely covering the bottom of the tent, like where it kind of settled in the middle. But the point is, the tent would have leaked enough that we would have been wet and miserable all night long. So I'm really super glad we got the F out of there. And I recall it being a kind of a scary drive home. It was like raining sideways. So getting into dry clothes, cooking that excellent dinner was just amazing. Dungeon Minister, hello. We were just talking about you a few minutes ago. We had a drive down Moral Panic Avenue and discussing the Satanic Panic. We had a couple of good questions about that. So, and then we started talking about fun stuff like skipping out on SCA events to go home and make country fried steak and tater tots and watch Conan the Barbarian while wrapped up in blankets on a fold-out couch. Which I think you'll agree is time well spent, yes? But anyway, are there any other questions? Does anyone have any further questions for me? Because I have a AD&D game at 10 o'clock, and you guys could just praying questions off of me as you want. I haven't had catfish in a long time, Todd. You're making me hungry. Pardon me, by the way. Now, I tell you what, Dungeon Minister went D&D LARPing in the tunnels under his town. Yes, he did. He was almost Tom Hanks. Where do babies come from? If you ask that question in the right context, you can find videos of it on YouTube, but I didn't send you looking for it. Am I fond of any Judges Guild adventures? As late as it is, Naughty Professor, I'm going to have to do a standalone video about what's going on with Drivethru tomorrow. So you guys will get a video about that tomorrow. But channel members, you'll hear about it first. I think. I don't know how membership works. Maybe you will. You'll all hear about it. But anyway, so what's going on with Drivethru? Hello, Lightmane. Good evening to you. No, that wasn't the question. Am I fond of any Judges Guild adventures? We did a deep dive of Dark Tower. Now, with some tweaking, I think Dark Tower could be a fantastic adventure to set in a Greyhawk campaign. I think there is encounter density in that module. There is a lot of encounter density. I might add some water. Do you follow what I'm saying? Because Dark Tower is AD&D concentrate. I think you got to mix some water in there. I think there's a lot of interesting mechanics in it. Tegel Manor is just a ridiculous fun romp. Tegel Manor is just it's a fun, ridiculous romp. Do recommend. Always have snacks, Andy. We sometimes talk about food. That's right. Galaxy Nachos. I'm going to impart to you guys the wisdom of Galaxy Nachos. Here is how you Galaxy Nacho. You get your roasting pan, line it with foil, layer of chips. Now, season some ground beef or some chicken. Some maniacs have even been known to attempt pulled pork. That's entirely up to you and your relationship with the Lord. But layer of meat on top of your layer of chips. Then another layer of chips. Now, on top of that layer of chips, you want to sprinkle all your cheese, your shredded cheese, Colby Jack, cheddar, all that. You want to sprinkle it evenly across. Then your jalapenos, your diced tomato, and your black olives. Then that goes back into the oven until your cheese is melty and your chips have started to brown just a little bit around the edges. Serve with guacamole and sour cream. Ladies and gentlemen, Galaxy Nachos. You're welcome. Orbital Air, we'll see you around. I can answer you that, Kennick, but it's close to your birthday, so it's going to be nice. I don't put that. That's you're like approaching like taco pie with that. Have it as a dip on the side, not in my Galaxy Nachos. My Galaxy Nachos are not like that. So like Galaxy glue, it'll glue your insides up in a good way. When I did the 12-hour live stream, the last 12-hour live stream that I did, I was eating Galaxy Nachos for the most of that. It starts up because it was on a Saturday. It starts up and I'm just eating them. Like, what are you guys doing here? But yeah, love Galaxy Nachos. Country nachos with deer meat. That's interesting. Now, yeah, salsa with Galaxy Nachos. Yeah, sure. Like I said, generally speaking, I'm just sour cream and guacamole are my go-tos with Galaxy. I may make some Galaxy Nachos this weekend because I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. Now, I've had chicken liver. My only gripe with chicken liver was it had a very dry finish to it. Like if you're expecting juicy chicken meat, you're not going to get it out of chicken livers. But the flavor is fine. It's got a very rich flavor. George Laconia says a Galaxy Sushi in Roswell. I want to go to Roswell one day. I would love to go to Roswell one day just because. The birth of the great American PSYOP, you know? So anything else, anything anybody wants to ask me, we can go on for about 90 minutes. Like I said, tomorrow a video is going to drop. I'm going to talk about Drivethru because this is actual news, not like, when I was confused about Wizards of the Coast last week before last. No, that's an actual video that's coming tomorrow about that. How many demons does it take to screw in a light bulb? None. Demons cast darkness 5-foot radius. Am I wearing pants? No, I am wearing shorts. New Mexico and sushi, not a connection I'd make. What is my favorite AD&D supplement? Ooh, good question. Because supplement is a very broad... I would have to say, for me, it's a tie as a DM. It is the Rogues Gallery, which has just a crap ton of pre-generated characters, but also the Dungeon Master's Adventure Log. Many handy charts, all in one book. You don't have to flip through page after page of Dungeon Master's Guide to find them. Geritol is your new friend. Oh, you stop. You're younger than me, I think. Anyway. All right. What is my favorite hardcover that isn't one of the core books? Oh, that's easy. Deities and Demigods. Deities and Demigods is my favorite. It has practical stuff for dungeon mastering stats that exceed 18. I love the gods pantheons in it. Even an expurgated version is very useful. Nice. Intro and outro music is awesome, Lightmane. Okay, so unless I get a super last question, I think that's where we're going to wrap it up. Thank you all very much for being here tonight. Thank you all for the supers. And just like with Todd, I will make sure that birthday monies are appropriately. Dirty History and Hobbies. Gary always called Deities and Demigods one of the core 4 books. That's an interesting take, Dirty Histories and Hobbies. Although the question was about outside the 3, so obviously that. But anyway, we'll be back tomorrow. We'll have a little bit of preamble before, but tomorrow night at 9 o'clock, we are going to be playing for your entertainment and for ours. 1st edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Our dungeon crew returns to the Caves of Chaos to see what chaos they can create in the caves. And then Wednesday, of course, Kyle will be here. We'll see what kind of trouble we can get in with Kyle. Thursday, more of this. Friday, we're going to play 1st edition Gamma World. The party is still inside Disney World. So we'll find out what happens there. Everybody, have a wonderful evening. I love you all. Again, thank you very much for the supers. And thank you for becoming a member, Naughty Professor. And the monies will be given to Sissy for the birthday. So everybody, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I will see you all tomorrow night at the appropriate time. I love you, and be good.
Have you seen my owl bear? Here's to all the weirdos everywhere in the woods and in the air. Have you seen my owl bear? Should I shave off all my hair? Bobs are all around. Some live in tunnels underground. Some are fat, some are rich, some are sleeping in a ditch. Can you ride a crooked horse without a saddle way off course? Naked as a toad all the way to Smoky Joe's. Have you seen the little creep driving fast in his little green Jeep? He smells like fish and brandy, but his rotten teeth look dandy. Take me to the show, I don't care if fast or slow. From action flicks to dancing dicks, just take me to the show.